Hello, these are the vocabulary terms that are coming from the short stories we are about to cover, and the period of the literary movement is often referred to as regionalism or naturalism, depending on the selection that we are engaged with. So let us begin. Here are the first 5 terms, and as always, we'll jump around and see which ones you can figure out just by some clues. And the first one is actually a synonym for someone who is lacking in sophistication, someone who's a little bit cowardly, a little bit soft, a little bit yellow. Yellow, actually, that's a good synonym for callow. Callow is an adjective, and it actually means lacking sophistication. Like a country bumpkin, almost. Someone who is uncultured, maybe a bit cowardly, would be someone who is callow. If you're cavorting about, you're basically jumping and moving around. You could talk about a little puppy who's cavorting around or moving and jumping. You can talk about partiers who are cavorting around. To go cavorting is to go in frenetic movement. Anything that is horrific or causing moral revulsion is abominable. Something that is detestable is abominable. Detestable. Something that is horrific, causing revulsion, is abominable. If you're going to agree with someone, if you're going to give your permission for something, you're going to acquiesce, to accept, or to agree. He acquiesced to the idea of jumping from the tree. If you are depriving something or you are bereft of friends, it means you are lacking something, deprived or lacking something. He was bereft of all feeling. In other words, all feeling was absent from him. And lastly, this word chilblains is not a very common one, but if you are somebody who works on a farm or someone who does a lot of work with their hands, you might suffer from chilblains, which is a noun, and they are these sort of red, calloused areas. It's a swollen area of the hands or feet. It usually happens from exposure to cold. Okay, here's our next bunch of terms. And the first one is a word that refers to a scarcity, a lack of something. There was a dearth of supplies at the camp, a scarcity, a lack of something. What a dearth of compassion in that character. It was an absence of it. There was nothing there. I know you recognize this word as a noun, which is this object that makes a sound, but as a verb, to chime in with what someone else is saying is to be in agreement with. I want you to chime in when we get to the part about defending our leader. If something is fit for intake, whether it's eating or drinking, that means it's fit for consumption. Consumption is the act of eating and drinking. To consume is to take in. So consumption is using something. Because of the high levels of consumption, we will be running out of that particular resource. And if we were to say that most of the book is really just conjecture, it's not fact. Conjecture is an opinion or an idea formed without any proof. You can't bring a case to court if it's all based on conjecture. So it's an opinion or an idea formed without evidence or proof. And the last two on this page, to cipher, a long time ago the word cipher meant to do math. And that would be the verb form. I have to go do my ciphering. You know, that's something that you might recognize from a book like The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. But as a noun, think of a cipher as a secret code, a way of changing a message to keep it secret. We had to use a cipher in order to get the information. It is a cipher that can't be decoded, so to speak. And contrivance is, you know, through methods of contrivance, they were able to convince her of something. Contrivance is a thing that's created skillfully to serve a particular purpose. Oops. I don't know how that happened. Time out. A thing that is created skillfully to serve a certain purpose. By all measures of contrivance, they were able to convince her that her husband was in fact on that train. Ooh, my, we gotta go back. Okay, here we go. The next 6 are up here, and I would say on this list there's one that means a word that's very good for being stubborn or really determined. To pursue something doggedly is to pursue something with great willfulness, with great determination. He decided he was going to seek out the truth. He doggedly sought the truth. He doggedly pursued Daisy Buchanan. If you talk about the Walkers, their house is very dilapidated. It is shabby. It's in poor condition. Kind of reflects the characters themselves. One of the big questions of A Separate Peace was whether or not Jean deliberately jounced the limb. Deliberate means done intentionally. Of course, he winds up saying that it was just a moment, he didn't really think. It was just pure emotion, and that would convey the idea that it wasn't necessarily intentional, that it wasn't on purpose. Maybe you've heard the word din. So if somebody talks about dinning, there was a dinning outside, that is a loud noise. The din of the crowd. If you have an opponent who is very formidable, they are strong, they instill fear, they cause dread in the minds of their opponents, right? And yet those are the best kind of competitions, aren't they? And an exhorter would be someone who's trying to influence another person's opinion. So an exhorter is a person. So we will say that it is one who tries to convince another or influence another. Sometimes preachers are called exhorters because they're trying to convince other people of the beliefs. Take, for instance, back in the Puritan revival, Jonathan Edwards was a very powerful exhorter, although he actually used a lot of fearful images of God in order to do so. And here are the last bunch. A lot of times people see the word infamous and think it's something positive, but because of the prefix, it makes it a very negative term. if you're infamous, his name will go down in infamy. You're not known for something good. You're known for being evil or malicious or bad. So you're not striving to be infamous, because that's the negative side of it. And if we think about this word, you could go back to Jonathan Edwards again, because he says that we're all sinners dangling over the infernal fires, meaning the fires of hell. So anything that is infernal is relating to hell. Anything that is bad or unpleasant would be infernal. The Puritans believed that an idle mind is the devil's workshop, because when you're idle, you're not working. When you're idle, you're doing nothing. You're inactive. And that's not good. If we go back to Tom Walker for a moment and we think about his horses, they are gaunt, right? There's the horse outside who's very, very thin, emaciated, lacking substance. And he would look longingly at passers-by, hoping for a little bit of food, because of course he only had that thin layer of moss on the ground by Tom's house. And lastly, Simon Wheeler in the celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County. The best word for Simon Wheeler is the word garrulous. The man can't stop talking. Perhaps you know someone like this. They are very talkative. And a good synonym for garrulous that begins with an L is loquacious. Okay, he tells one story about Jim Smiley, and then he's ready to go on and tell another story about a yellow-tailed, one-eyed cow or something like that at the end, but the narrator can't get out of there fast enough. Okay, so that's the first set of terms from the vocabulary that deals with regionalism and nationalism. Naturalism, I should say.